All right, let's get right into it. On March 18th, the market was all set for a calm, totally predictable rate hold from the Federal Reserve. A non-event. But what they got instead? It was a shockwave. And that shockwave left everyone asking the same question. Are the interest rate cuts we were all promised this year, are they really off the table? This is the fear that's gripping investors after Jerome Powell, in his final big meeting, slipped in a hidden message that sent a chill through the markets. So to really get what happened, you have to understand the bigger picture. This wasn't just another boring FOMC meeting. Oh no. This was Powell's last major press conference before his term ends. It was his final chance to set the tone, and believe me, the world he was speaking to was a mess. I mean, look at this timeline. Just weeks before he had to speak, a new war exploded in the Middle East. Then the Strait of Hormuz, which is like a superhighway for the world's oil, gets blockaded. And just like that, global oil supply tanks by 17%, practically overnight. So that's the backdrop as Powell walks out to face the cameras. Yikes. Now, the actual decision to keep interest rates the same, everyone saw that coming. The market had it at like 99.8% probability, so that wasn't the news. The real bombshell, the thing that actually scared people, was buried deep inside two documents that they released along with the announcement. So let's play detective. Our first piece of evidence comes from the Fed's own crystal ball for interest rates, the thing we all know and obsess over as the dot plot. For anyone who's new to this, the dot plot is basically a secret ballot. You've got the 19 most powerful money people in the world, and this chart shows, anonymously, where each one of them thinks rates are headed. Since they only release this thing 4 times a year, when it drops, it has the power to move mountains and markets. And this analogy here, it absolutely nails it. Imagine a commentator being super confident about a win, and then at halftime, they're suddenly sounding nervous. What do the fans do? They panic. That is exactly what the Fed just did to the market. And here's the betrayal in black and white. Just look at the difference. Back in December, the mood was a party. We had 12 out of 19 Fed members signaling rate cuts were coming. The champagne was on ice. But flash forward to March, the party's over. The median forecast just collapsed to one single cut. And even crazier, almost half of them, 7 members, are now saying 0 cuts this year. Wow. But hold on, because the dot plot was just the first shoe to drop. The second clue, the one that's arguably even more terrifying, was hiding in plain sight in the Summary of Economic Projections, or the SEP. Okay, this is where you really need to pay attention. Look at the table. The Fed barely changed its forecast for economic growth, right? Just a tiny little nudge up. But look at inflation. They jacked up their inflation forecast a lot. They're basically admitting that their big 2% target is way, way further down the road than they told us just 3 months ago. And this is the number that matters, 2.7%. This is now the Fed's official prediction for inflation in 2026. It's not just a number. It's a public confession that the fight against inflation isn't just not over. They might actually be losing ground. So let's put the pieces together. You've got an economy that's still chugging along, but inflation is getting super sticky and refusing to go down. When you mix those two things together, it points directly to the one scenario that gives every central banker on the planet nightmares. Yup, there it is, the ghost that haunts the economy, stagflation. It's that horrible, toxic cocktail from the 1970s, where the economy stalls out, but prices just keep climbing higher and higher. It leaves the Fed totally trapped with no good moves left to make. And if you need proof they're worried, look no further. This chart, which was buried deep in their report, is the smoking gun. They asked the members, what are you most worried about? And look at the answers. An overwhelming majority said they're worried about growth being lower than they expect and inflation being higher. Folks, that is literally the textbook definition of stagflation risk. Even Powell couldn't dodge it. During the press conference, he actually had to say the S word out loud. And, the very fact that he felt he had to say, it's not the 1970s, well, that tells you everything you need to know about what they're really talking about behind closed doors. So this sudden, aggressive turn from Powell does more than just mess up our 2026 plans. It's signaling the big comeback of the higher for longer interest rate mantra, and it's perfectly setting the table for a whole new era at the Fed. See, Powell is on his way out, and his likely replacement is this guy, Kevin Warsh, who is known for being an absolute hawk on inflation. He's an inflation-first, at-all-costs kind of guy.
So what Powell just did was basically hand him the perfect excuse. This final, grim warning gives Warsh all the political cover he needs to be even tougher and keep rates even higher than anyone was dreaming of.
Okay, so that's the scary setup. What on earth does this all mean for us, for our investments, for the markets? Let's break down the possible ways this could play out and the crucial signals that you need to be watching. Really, it all comes down to the price of oil. Scenario 1, the best case. We get a truce in the Middle East, oil prices fall, and the market breathes a huge sigh of relief. Scenario 2, the neutral case. The conflict just kind of putters along, keeping oil high and the market choppy. But scenario 3, the worst case. If that blockade drags on and oil spikes, forget rate cuts. The Fed might be forced to start hiking rates again. So going forward, you need to keep your eyes glued to 3 things. First, the next dot plot in a few months. How many members are still on board for a rate cut? Second, listen to the Fed's language very, very carefully. Do they call this oil shock temporary or persistent? That one word means everything. And third, watch the next economic forecast to see if that scary gap between low growth and high inflation is getting wider or starting to close. So as we're all sitting here, kind of swimming in all this bad news, war, oil shocks, stagflation fears, a Fed that's turned hostile, I'm going to leave you with this thought from the legendary investor Sir John Templeton. He famously said that bull markets are born on pessimism. So the question we have to ask ourselves now is this. Could all this fear, all this uncertainty be the very thing that's setting the stage for the next great opportunity?